So today, as Lee said, I'm Sam Riddell. I'm an analyst at Mandiant, and I'm going to present on the campaign we refer to as NDP. I know there's at least one Polish speaker in the audience, so I'm not going to butcher that name here. But what NDP is, it's a pro-Russian Polish language influence campaign centered around the NDP outlet that I had the pleasure of co-investigating with my colleague David Mainor. David was actually supposed to present this. It was really his main investigation. He wasn't able to be here today, but I just want to say a huge shout out and thanks to David. Slide. All right, I'm going to really try to put the lightning in lightning talk and just go through a lot of content quickly here. So, quick campaign overview. We'll discuss the overlaps with the Ghostwriter campaign, which many of you are familiar with. Talk about what the campaign's up to in the present day, and then touch on a few takeaways. Slide. Slide. So our understanding, first of all, of NDP has greatly benefited from the work of a lot of other organizations. So firstly, some of the original Polish journalists and in-country investigators did great work on this, in addition to entities like Stanford, IO researchers across the board, NATO, and others. So we want to thank them. Slide. All right, so what is NDP? First, let's start with what NDP claims to be. NDP claims to be an independent political journal that is based in Poland. However, what we and others have assessed is that, in fact, this is an inauthentic news outlet that operates in support of Russian political interests. We've also identified a broader influence campaign surrounding the journal. So the journal is just one asset in this larger campaign. We refer to this campaign as NDP as well. I'm sorry, I know it's a little confusing. It's also a key asset in the pro-Russian information space. And as I've said, it's linked to the Ghostwriter campaign. Slide. So, NDP formerly was best defined by what it was against. So it is heavily anti-NATO, anti-EU, anti-US. They're very against the right-wing Law and Justice Party in Poland and against immigration. And most of the themes they touched on have to do with Poland specifically or the theme of military affairs. After the Russian invasion, they've had a renewed vigor and focus on life and become overtly pro-Russian just across the board. Slide. So how do they do this? What infrastructure do they have at their disposal? So the primary vector that I think a lot of people are familiar with is the outlet itself, which has been hosted on at least 8 domains over its history. But in addition to this, NDP has a wide variety of social media accounts on both Western social media platforms at certain times and more niche outlets such as Telegram. We've also identified at least 28 inauthentic personas that are affiliated with this campaign. So they do anything from posing as editors to of the outlet to author personas and actually authoring content for the website to engaging in dissemination, or CIB. This campaign, just like Ghostwriter, is augmented by offensive cyber capabilities. So I'll touch on how that works here in a moment. And there's an additional linked news outlet that we believe is linked to both NDP and Ghostwriter that we're going to reveal today for the first time. Slide. Slide. So blow through a few case studies here. The first being this operation in which a fabrication was posted to at least 3 compromised local Polish websites. So this operation promoted the claim essentially that land that had belonged to Germany pre-World War II was going to be returned to Germany from Polish citizens to German citizens. So clearly seeking to stoke the divide between Polish and German citizens, especially along the border, such that we observed the targeting of these websites to be highly geographically specific. They all aligned with municipalities or localities right up against the Poland-German border. Next day, we saw NDP persona dissemination by these inauthentic accounts, and it's notable that they directly linked to the live compromises, or in some cases to archived versions of the URLs on sites like Wayback Machine, which we believe was done in order to maintain preemptive persistence, anticipating essentially that the websites would catch on and remove these articles. Slide. This next one is pretty brazen and I think failed pretty horrifically, but worth talking about. So this operation publicly reported that dozens of sites were defaced, and they were defaced with this image of a, quote, suicide bomber and an Arabic language warning that read, "Jihad has no borders, stop the American soldiers or we will come to your homes." So this stuck out a little odd to us, just highly specific anti-US military narrative here, and then sure enough, the day after these defacements, we saw the whole variety of the NDP apparatus basically promote this narrative that the Islamic State, or ISIS, was planning an attack on Poland, citing these defacements as evidence for those claims. Then a second wave of dissemination followed up upon this, in which an article published by an author of NDP to the NDP domain was injected into very highly micro-targeted online communities affiliated with US military divisions and units that were stationed in Poland. So groups on social media or specific blogs. Slide. So in addition to the CIB we observed, there were some pretty obvious indicators that also pointed to the fact that we think that this is a false flag. The first being that the so-called jihadist in the photo, it appears was actually just a Palestinian activist. We tracked this based on reverse image search, and even the suicide vest is just full of fake charges. So they didn't even pull a fake photo of a real terrorist. In addition to that, the word jihad was spelled wrong in Arabic. So if I was a, quote, cyber terrorist, I think I would know how to spell at least that word. Slide. And the third, I'm not going to go through just for time, but I do want to highlight it as a good segue into the overlaps with Ghostwriter because of its thematic similarity. So this operation involving a website compromise promoted the narrative that US soldiers driving by their base in Poland had caused a fatal car accident, fatally wounding multiple Polish citizens. Just 2 to 3 months later, we saw an operation that we associated with the Ghostwriter campaign claimed that a NATO Stryker vehicle driving around by its base had run over a local child on its bicycle. So they don't get very creative in reinventing these operations. Slide. Slide. So to briefly back up, if you're not familiar with Ghostwriter, Ghostwriter is a predominantly anti-NATO, pro-Russian, pro-Belarusian influence campaign that we and others have reported on for some time. And we have observed what we believe to be some pretty strong indicators suggesting at the bare minimum coordination or at least shared planning between the NDP and Ghostwriter operations. So everything from thematic overlaps, like I just discussed, to TTPs and even direct persona interaction, so liking each other's content on Facebook or other sites, and a few others that I'll go through here briefly. Slide. Content overlap, another example of this would be this fairly unique Death Ender graphic and phrase that they've coined, and both campaigns promoted this as a play on words, playing with the Defender 2020 exercise's name. And then here on the right, we have 2 videos, one promoted by a Ghostwriter persona, the other promoted by the official NDP account. It's the exact same video that we saw nowhere else. The only difference is one was dubbed in English and one was dubbed in Poland. So they're apparently using these 2 different campaigns to target 2 different target audiences. Slide. Even down to aesthetic similarities between the inauthentic news outlets associated with both the campaigns. So on the left, we have Baltic Word, which we have linked to Ghostwriter, and then NDP on the right. Slide. And just quickly, what I mean by operational overlap, I want to give one example of that and something we've seen. So we've seen multiple Ghostwriter operations that were directly promoted by NDP personas in real time as they happened. And this was, again, direct links to the URLs of those compromised domains that hadn't appeared elsewhere before. Slide. Slide. Oh, great. So what's NDP up to today? So first of all, they've seemed to really tone down the cyber-enabled activity. We haven't seen much of that recently, but we have seen continued activity from legacy NDP assets and the website itself, continued authoring of articles, and a very strong and sudden shift to Telegram around the beginning of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Slide. So as you can see here, right around February of this year, both their subscribers and their reach went up dramatically. This is partially, I believe, because of the invasion, but partially also because of deplatforming actions taken by Western social media companies around this time. Slide. Here's an example of some of the pro-Russian content that they abruptly pivoted to, the left being a famous pro-Russian talking point that the missile strike in the Kramatorsk train station was actually conducted by Ukrainian forces rather than Russian forces, which is of course not the case. And then on the right, this Trojan horse narrative that if Ukrainian refugees were allowed into the country of Poland, they would be a threat to Poland from the inside. Slide. So to sum up, basically they did a decent job, or at least they tried for some time, to hold up the facade of being a nominally independent Polish language outlet. But that kind of all changed after the invasion, and now it's just to the degree that they're literally reposting Russian Ministry of Defense briefings. Slide. So the last thing I want to highlight is Polska News. This is the outlet I referenced earlier. This is something we've somewhat recently identified, and we believe it's another suspected inauthentic news outlet that is linked to both NDP and Ghostwriter. So very strong overlaps in multiple ways, even down to the fact that both sites use inauthentic editors and author personas, and we have seen some limited specific operational overlap between the campaigns as well. Slide. So, takeaways. I think that one of the big ones is just that as these campaigns that we're all investigating get more nuanced and more, quote, sophisticated over time, that it can take years or quite a long time to uncover the full scope of what we're looking at. And then another is the effects of deplatforming and actor persistence in the IO domain. So, while I think it's certainly a net positive that action by Western social media companies are able to drastically reduce the reach of these operations, there's often a second order effect of then these campaigns that are well-resourced moving elsewhere, and sometimes enjoying somewhat of a success on places like Telegram. So they're reaching far less of an audience, but maybe one that's more radicalized or primed to receive their messaging. And then the third is just kind of a question, a research question that we wanted to leave you with. And it's that we saw not only NDP, but other pro-Russian assets we tracked really dramatically turn to supporting the war in Russia right around February. And so there's kind of an open question of, was this just an organic, patriotic rally around the flag effect that can best explain this? Or was there perhaps something more formal, a top-down shared directive that can explain this? So without humans, I don't think we can know, but if any of you have any ideas, I'd love to chat with you further. Slide. If you have any other further questions for either David or myself, please feel free to reach out to us on Twitter or email or find me outside. Thank you.